Okay, I got an update on a personal story. If you guys follow me for any period of time, you know that I predominantly talk about politics, but I also talk about rock and roll and Gen X culture and green beans legalization and Chicagoland history and all of that stuff. But I also talk about my personal life as well. And recently I had a fence put in, and there were some issues with the fence, and everything is almost done now. And I have an update for you. So, a week ago, a week and a half ago, we had a new fence put in. We had put in a 6-foot privacy fence 18 years ago. The posts had all rotted away at the ground level where you have mulch and dirt and moisture up against them for 2 decades, and it was time to replace the fence. This time we went with a vinyl 6-foot privacy fence, and we had the company out here about a week and a half ago to cut down the old fence, put in the new posts. They came back the following day to finish up the rest of the fence. Only they put the entire west property line fence in the wrong spot. So, if I could kind of hopefully explain this well, all of us have fences. Myself and my neighbor on either side. My neighbor to the east didn't tie into I put a fence around our entire yard. He did not tie into either of our posts at the front or the back. He had his own posts. The neighbor to the west had his own post in the front, but in the back he tied into my post. No big deal, don't give a shit. But we needed to replace that post with a new vinyl post. And what I did was, when I contracted with the fence company, I had them include an additional wooden post that I was going to pay for my neighbor, since I was taking the post he had tied into. I was going to go ahead and not leave him hanging and put a wooden post just inside his property line, nail his fence into his new post, put my new vinyl post where my existing wooden post was, and replace everything. Only the crew did not put that new vinyl post where that wooden post is. They put it inside of it. So my neighbor was left with my post, and because of the now new angle of the fence line, more backyard that was actually my backyard. So I had a couple of choices. Have them move the whole fence line, or have them give me some money off the fence for fucking it up. Because at the end of the day, what really happened was that my neighbor got more land. So I wouldn't give the crew the balance until I spoke to a manager. Took the manager about a week to get back to me. And when he did, he asked me to explain to him what happened. Now, the salesman failed to convey that post needed to come out, and that's where my new vinyl post was supposed to go. He failed to convey that to the crew. He admits that. It was his fuck up. I have text messages and emails where he and I discussed this at great length, and he failed to convey that to the crew. So it's not the crew's fault. The crew did not fuck up the placement of the fence. The crew is actually quite good. Phenomenal crew. Fantastic crew. Totally the salesman's fault. Anyway, I could either make them move this, because the crew never came to me and said, all right, we're ready to start doing post holes. They cut down my existing fence and then started digging new post holes and started setting new posts and putting fence pieces together without ever going, is this where it's supposed to be? Or without a salesman coming out going, yeah, that's where it's supposed to be. They just started doing new post holes because they believed that that's where it was supposed to be per the conversations they had with their salesman. Anyway, I could make them move the whole fence line, take the whole goddamn thing up and move it to where it's supposed to be, or ask them for some money off. So I threw out a number that I thought was appropriate, admittedly high, but appropriate. The owner of the company calls me. We talk about the whole thing. He says, listen, I can't do more than X. I say, let's meet in the middle. Somewhere. So I asked for $2,500 off. He said, I'll give you $1,000 off. I said, can we meet somewhere in the middle? He goes, yeah, it does cost me, to send a crew out. And listen, it's not the owner's fault. The owner of the company didn't fuck this up. His idiot salesman fucked it up, right? So the owner is taken the brunt for what his salesman's fuck up. So I asked for $2,500 off. He says I'll give you $1,000 off. I said, can we meet somewhere in the middle? He says $1,750. And explains to me how, it's going to cost him to send a crew out to do this and lose a day's late work somewhere else, yada yada. And I said, one business owner to the next, I'll make an even better offer to meet us in the middle. Just give me $1,500 off. I'll cut the check right now. You're giving me a decent chunk off. I'm saving you a couple of hundred from what you're offering. It's not your fault, but I do deserve some compensation for your salesman fucking this up. He's like, done. Sends over an email saying not $1,500 off. I write the check. One of his guys stops by and picks it up. So the fence is done. The fence is where it's going to be. I would recommend using the company because the company does have good workers and they do a good fence. I would just not recommend using that salesman. The company is Cedar Mountain Fence in Plainfield, Illinois. They install a hell of a fence. They really do a good job. But do not use BJ, the salesman. This is the same guy who told me that I lived in unincorporated Shanahan, so we don't need to pull permits. And I said, no, I live in town. And over the course of 3 days, argued with me whether or not I lived in unincorporated or in the town. Like, I don't fucking know where I live. Then didn't convey the message, the placing properly to the crew. And then when he came out here, when I was having a disagreement with the company about the fence being in the wrong spot, said, well, let's go dig for the pin. Like, I didn't know where my property line was, and it was exactly where it was. So do not use BJ. Use Cedar Mountain, but do not use BJ. Now, there is another slight issue, but this does happen with fence companies, so it happens quite frequently with fence companies, but they called the underground joint utility locators, and they located the electrical lines, and they did run along where the fence was supposed to go. The marks were there. The crew acknowledged the marks were there, but they must have hit, when they were digging for the post holes, one of the 3 phases, because they've cut my power. Like, maybe they nicked it and it eroded over the last week. Now I don't have power coming from the back box to the back of the house the way it's supposed to. And ComEd came out and said, no doubt that they nicked that line. Listen, that happens. I'm not going to get pissy with the fence company. I've nicked 1 million electrical lines and gas lines in my day when I was landscaping. So, that happens. So I'm currently dealing with that shit. However, the fence is done. The company was responsive as far as being willing to work. He said, listen, we'll come out, we'll move the line if you want it moved, or we'll work with you on a price off. And I said it shouldn't be me having to say, hey, you guys got to come out and redo an entire day's worth of labor. But it is in the wrong spot. So I'm glad that they worked with me. Cedar Mountain Fence in Plainfield. They install a hell of a fence. It looks great. The crew was phenomenal. The gals in the office that do the scheduling, phenomenal, right? The office staff is really responsive, answering any question you had, no matter what. Just the problem was with the salesman, BJ. And if you're using